I'm Andy Erwin, and this is The Storytellers. Coming up on this edition of The Storytellers, this guy, he makes me laugh. Every time I'm with him, he just holds court and has everybody in stitches, and he's a master storyteller, and he does it in this aw shucks way because of where he's from and his family background and just his style. He's always one of the smartest guys in the room, but he does it in such a funny, self-deprecating way that it just sucks you into the stories, and before you know it, you're just bursting at sides laughing. He's got a real talent for it. He's built an entire brand on it. His family has been known for that. Made a huge background as a businessman, and they have this amazing company that does that's a hunting company everybody knows and visits their stores, gets all their product, and then he spun that off with his family into a reality show empire that then now is branched out in every direction possible. So I've already given it away. This guy. You know him from his hit TV show on A&E, Duck Dynasty. They just did their family story, a feature film of his father called The Blind. He's a renowned speaker, author, and tons of other things. Was on The Masked Singer. This guy is awesome. So would you please welcome my guest, Willie Robertson. Dude, since we met, I've been like, I want to sit down just for an hour and talk to this guy and just about just shoot the breeze. You're always a ton of fun. Welcome to the podcast, to The Storytellers.
It's great to be here.
So you're kind of a professional podcaster. Like, this is your side gig.
I did a podcast like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I knew, I said, I think these things are going to be, this is the thing to do. And, but, man, it's a lot of work. But at the time I was filming the show, like I had a lot of stuff going on, but I kind of thought, man, this is great. And I did it for a year, but, oh, man, I got weary. It was like that day of the week, every time it'd come up, I'd be like, it was like the weeks could not slow down. And then I was always getting a guest, and so I felt like I was selling Amway to my friends. I was like, hey, I'm calling. But there's a purpose.
How did you make the ask? Because I'm trying to still figure it out, because I'm just like, I get the awkward pause. I'm like, well, what would you think about maybe, sitting down and talking on a show with some cameras?
Well, I think now, I guess it's so much like everybody knows now. I mean,
so when you started, it was
like
it was
80% of my friends have a podcast.
So it's
my family. Probably 90% of my family has a podcast. So it's I think now it's like back then it was not it wasn't, there wasn't as many of them there, and so it was like you'd call and do the awkward chit chat. The hey, how you did, and so and there's something coming, and then hey, do you want to? And back then too, it was always together.
Oh, so it wasn't Zoom.
There wasn't. There was.
Yeah, it's a commitment.
The Zoom hadn't even. It was like, how do I meet up with you? I did some out when I was like, I had my little setup, and I would do it. But it was great. I love talking to people, and I had some interesting people and friends that I did, and so then I was like, I'm not doing that anymore. And then every time I get tempted, I'll go do some more, because I'm on Dad's. I'm on Dad's some. I've been on Sadie's. I fill in, and now with promotions, like it's a lot of it's podcast.
Yeah,
so
it is.
Which makes it longer.
Yeah,
back in the day, you'd do like a 5-minute interview on a movie coming out or a TV show, but now it's like, hey, we've got you set up for these 6 podcasts today, and it's like 6 hours of talking, and so but they're cool, and so because you can get more in depth, and I like listening to podcasts and things, and so the more I listen, the more I'm like, okay,
I've gotten into on Sirius XM. They have this new Conan O'Brien channel where they put all of Conan Needs a Friend, all of his old ones, and I listened to it on a loop, and I was like, oh, that's just like. Seems like fun, and
that's one of my favorites. I love listening.
It's always hysterical. Yeah. It was funny. Did you hear the one with Harrison Ford? He had Harrison Ford on there, and then Harrison Ford's like, he's asking a question, and Harrison's always so grumpy, and he's like, he looks over at Conan's notes in the middle of it. He's like, "Did you actually have to say on there he played Han Solo? Did you not know that, you idiot?" And it's like, it's great.
He is quick and funny.
It's
I
funny.
love listening to him. So,
Dude, well, you and I got to be friends, over the past year or so. We had bumped into each other from time to time, but like we were at this thing, like Christian event in Florida, and we were there, and like I was looking for somebody else that was like me, that was a little bit of a rebel, that So I texted you. I'm like, dude, what are you up to tonight? You're like, I was going to play hooky from the meeting. I was like, I was too.
Oh, for
and
sure.
So we're like sneaking off to the side,
We
and going
snuck
and hanging
off
out,
and
like
didn't,
we're the
didn't
bad
go to
kids.
the,
And I was like, dude, I love this guy. Like you make me laugh. Like your stories, like you're a great storyteller in that you just love to have these stories where you hold court. Like, have you always been like that? Like you just like to hold court?
I think you kind of learn it. I think it comes from hearing other storytellers. So growing up, we were really poor, but we weren't like angry poor. We didn't have anything, but we were happy, and so kind of the dynamics, which kind of is where Duck Dynasty, that table scene came from, was that it was a smaller table at that point, but we would have meals together, especially dinner or supper, and so mom would cook or dad would cook, they'd cook something together, and then we'd all sit down and we would eat. And that's where these stories came from.
Yeah.
And my dad was just such a great storyteller. I mean, he just was over the top. And so we had all these stories about, and generally it was about hunting, because we hunted and fished for a living. That was our livelihood. So it was all these stories about the hunt. So it'd be like, let's say we were eating, let's say ducks. It would be like, when we're eating the ducks, we're talking about how many we got, and so it's all, and then there's arguments between
You try to one up each other.
Oh yeah. And so as a kid, you just listened, and what was interesting was it's such a different dynamic now than how I grew up, because the kids, we didn't say much, we just kind of sat down there, and we just didn't really, because my grandparents at the time were alive, my dad's parents, and so they were there, and so you just kind of listened, and then you'd laugh. And so I think that's where I just kind of learned how to tell these stories and get to the point. And if you ever had something to say as a kid, it was a big moment, and it was like, don't screw this up. It was like, well, yeah, I got something. It's like everybody looks at you and you're like, I'm nervous, and I'm like, I hope this comes out good. And you could tell when it fell flat.
It's a hard audience.
Yeah, Dad'd be like, okay, all right, back to you. And so that's where we kind of learned. There wasn't a whole lot of TV. We had 3 channels, and since it was one TV, it was pretty much whatever Dad watched when he was there, or mom. And then so we would get home, we would watch the Dukes of Hazzard, but we always had to work, so we had to fold boxes for the duck calls while we watched Dukes of Hazzard. And so a little TV, but mostly outside. And so it was just a different, I think creativity really came, but I think that's where I got the storytelling. And then I think just, I'm kind of a good imitator, so I used to always do imitations of people, and so I really watch the nuances of people, and I'll pick up on a quirk pretty soon, and I'll drop it in there, that's something I notice. And love doing it with my wife, just the little things she does, little words she'll say. And then
your wife is a really good straight man, like in a comedy show. Like she grounds it. Like you were telling me your holding court. The thing that we were at, and you're telling me about you guys starting at a new church, and that you're in the back and had your little dip cut or whatever. And
God, you're gonna tell that story. Of all the stories, I haven't even told that story.
That's so good.
It's so embarrassing.
Oh my God.
Oh, the most embarrassed I've ever been in my life. We visited this church, and
you're gonna kill me for this.
This is not something. At the time I was dipping snuff. I didn't say I wasn't. Now I'm just saying at that time I was. And so I was kind of nervous being in this building, and I thought, hey man, this guy's talking. I'm just gonna throw a little pinch in here, And I know a lot of people are gonna have a problem with that, sitting in this church building. But it's at the time I was like, it's gonna get me through this awkwardness of being in this new church. And so I had this coffee cut. Everything was going swimmingly, and the service was over, and we're like hundreds of people
Yeah.
were pouring out these front doors. And I turned to say something to someone. And when I turned back around, the door had closed in my face and it hit my hand, hit the cup, and it all went all over the foyer. And I'm on my hands and knees, and I'm like, and there was it was obvious what it was. This is not a coffee spill, and there's no, and so I'm down there. I mean, like, I'm literally like on my hands and knees. And my wife just looks at me and she went, "You're so disgusting." And just literally kept walking. Just left me right there.
I don't know him. And when you told the story, you're like, "But I've learned my lesson." I was like, "You don't dip in church anymore?" And you're like, "No, I don't stand that close to the door."
I've just been around some people who are just great. When I see somebody that's a great storyteller, like Luke Bryan, he is one of the best storytellers. I mean, he makes everything funny. It's just
Luke's like that. He's
on another level.
So he came into our offices a little while back, and he's got this story he's developing that's actually turned out to be a fantastic story. But he had forgotten that the meeting was that day, so he kind of shows up late. Shocker. And so he shows up. And he's like, "Oh man, I thought you guys were in California. We're gonna Zoom." I was like, "He's like, you're right out my back door." So he shows up, and we're with a group of friends, and he's talking. And I was like, "All right, well, we're here. We got the whole boardroom table. Everybody's around it. Like, okay, what's this show about that you want to do?" He's like, "Okay, wait for it. It's a show. It's a movie about fishing." And I'm like, "Great. Okay, so what happens next?" Like, they fish. And I'm like, he's like, "Great." And then he starts walking, and then he starts like on the fly just kind of coming up with this story he wants to tell. And he's like, but it was so entertaining and engaging that I leaned in. I'm like, "I think we need to make that movie." And it's like,
well, that's what I'm saying. He can tell it as really entertaining.
Yeah.
So, and that's so funny. He and I have done a lot of, because we do Buck Command together. So we filmed a lot together. And sometimes he'll come up with these ideas and it's like, "Luke, there's no way." But he, as far as an audience, like one of the best entertainers, which is why he's such a good entertainer.
Yeah.
Just on the stage. I mean, he's so captivating. And so I think being around people like that, people who are great storytellers, you kind of pick up. And so there's probably a version of imitating there. And then, and I think, and again, it's, I think dealing with hard issues through laughter and through being able to tell a story has been helpful. But I'll pick up on things like my wife, one of the things she does. So, and I noticed that so when I would call her and she'll go, "Hey," and she draws it out. And so I can always tell when she answers the phone how well she knows them by how long and so then I started, so every time she calls me now and I go, "Hey," and I see how long I can hold the "hey." And she knew I must do that. And I was like, "You do that." And so,
that's awesome.
So there's little things that I'll pick up on. And, but I think stories are great. And I mean, I think that's what we did with Duck Dynasty is just tell stories, through pictures and, and so there's kind of an art. I think it's an art form, to be able to do that.
Well, you guys have definitely, and I think the thing that you did so well on Duck Dynasty is you did kind of disarm people with the laugh, and then all of a sudden you would bring it to heart, and then real life things, and then you bring it to, you'd always close it with faith, and it was kind of there was an interesting formula of what you guys fought for on that show, and I know it was hard fought. Like, did you guys see the Duck Dynasty thing coming? And was that like a master plan, or did you guys stumble into that and figure it out on the fly?
No master plan, which I think was part of the secret to success. I mean, that's what left a lot of the authenticity there, because it was not planned out. It was not like, "Hey, we want to be on TV." Because that's where I see, a lot of people that are on TV, especially reality, they'll do anything. It doesn't matter. Like, if you tell them to do anything, even the worst things ever, they'll do it, because they want to be on TV. And so when that happens, and I don't blame them or fault them, it's I guess it's human nature. But what happens is then you're not as authentic, because you're not really. And so the closer you can keep it to who you are and what that is, you know, and then the more authentic you can be. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't, you know. And we just happen to have a lightning in a bottle of the different characters. And so, and the way it was shot was because that, you know, part of the reason, I mean, what made it really funny was the editing. I mean, the editing was just so good.
It was good.
Mean, these long pauses and these looks, you know, and like every time I was shooting, like, because if I knew I had a camera on me, which was obviously a lot, even when I wasn't talking, I would just make funny looks, you know. And it's funny how they would pull. I may have been looking,
Yeah.
You know, I'd be like, and the way they would edit, and it would just, and they'd have that little guitar hit. It'd be like, and in fact, I'll use that all the time. Like sometimes somebody will say something awkward, and I'll go, and everybody knows it's the guitar from Duck Dynasty. Like, but the way they did that, I think, was really clever. And so, and you had this kind of like when I was working with Cy, that dude could just he would just come up with the most outlandish stuff, or he could absorb it.
Yep.
And then so like a lot of the stuff, like if it was pop culture or something that I just thought this would be so funny if Cy said like a Beyonce line from a song, you know. And so I'd say, hey Cy, say if you love it, you better put a ring on it. You know, well, then he would then he would do it.
And he messed up
but when he screwed it up, it was even funnier. One time I said, Cy, say, this is how you do it. And Cy goes, okay. And Cy goes, hey, this is the way that you do it. And so it was so funny. The hardest part actually in filming was not laughing, you know, because a lot of times I wasn't I was usually mad or not understanding. And so it would just be so hard not to just laugh the whole time at the stuff he was doing because you knew it was going to come out. And then Phil, the complete opposite. Phil was so serious and is so serious, which to me, and I guess growing up with him as my dad, that's where I found humor because he was so serious.
Yeah.
And it just makes me I just start laughing thinking about it. The things that he's like, and so he would just go off on this deal. And so one of my favorites was this episode where John Luke was dating this girl. And so Phil was going to take him out for dating advice. And so Phil gets him in the boat and he goes, all right, here's my advice. Chlamydia, gonorrhea. And I mean, because I wasn't there the day they filmed it, and I start laughing so hard. And here's what's funny, Andy. It was the same speech I got when I was
like, no cameras around,
just a bunch of sexually transmitted diseases. And so I went to Phil the next day. I said, Phil, I saw the episode. I said, it was so funny. And Phil looks at me. He's not smiling. He goes, that wasn't supposed to be funny. I said, I know. That's what made it so funny.
That was a heart to heart. That was life lessons.
Yeah. So you had funny. Cy being like he is, and then you had Phil, which again is totally authentic. Like if you hang out with Cy, everybody asks me, is he really like that? And I'm like, do you think you could fake that for that long? Like he's a bizarre guy. And then you had Phil, who's just pretty much always like he is. And not that Phil could tell a story. And I think when Phil was younger, he was, it was a little more funny. The older he got, the kind of the more, you know, hellfire and brimstone he became, which was a little different, but it's still funny. And Mom was always funny. I mean, Mom was pretty much the reason we were funny because we would, And I think in the movie The Blind, when you see the past, and then to see where she could find some sort of joy and find comedy and fun in life,
kind of a way to cope,
being that hard,
it
was like a way to cope. And so, actually, Mom just told me this recently, which I never knew, but she said you always, when you were a little kid, somebody asked, one of my kids asked her, what was Dad like when he was a little kid? And because we have no videos, I have literally about 8 pictures of before I was before school started. Wow. I knew I'd get one picture a year of school. You know, they would take one, but Mom wasn't big on cameras. But she said he would always try to make me laugh, and I'm sure during that hard time of with their marriage on the rocks and Dad kicking us out. But she said Willie would always try to make us laugh. So, which is funny because I guess we're still doing that. But yeah, when we get together, and my oldest brother Al is really funny. He thinks funny. So I always say people that think funny. So when you see something and I can't help it. I just think of what would be funny about this, and so that just becomes like a I think it's just a muscle that you exercise.
Yeah.
And, you know,
No,
some of it works, some of it doesn't, you know, but,
Well,
but I think it's, you know, I think people like to smile and laugh. And let's face it, I mean, on TV, there was not just, I mean, especially now, but there's just not a lot of the things that other people think are funny. I mean, look at what used to be late night or what used to be fun. It's just gotten so serious, and it's not funny, you know?
Well, everything's, and also like to really get a laugh, you have to kind of be willing to poke at things that make people uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And everything's gotten so politically correct now that comedians, I feel sorry for them having to do their job now, because they have to kind of dance around like things that just aren't that funny. And you know, and I think true comedy is there to make people think. It's there to poke at frustration.
Yeah, it's the little bit of truth, but then you can, you know, and yeah, it's kind of sad. So and then, you know, I think a lot of the stuff that comes out of Hollywood, it's you know, it's these younger writers and stuff, and they're kind of all together, but they're kind of in a bubble, you know, and so they don't really, it's the stuff they think is funny, so it's kind of this snarky stuff that's not, and it just doesn't resonate. I feel like for middle America, you know, it's like we don't live in that world, and so the things they think are funny, so there is that difference, and I think Duck Dynasty was able to capitalize on that as far as that aspect. But then you had the faith, which we didn't, because you asked, did you guys did I think it was coming? No, we really, you know, we sat down with production, and we decided to have the prayer. It may have even been their idea. Like, it was like, hey, this would be, you know, what do y'all do when you get together at the table? Because we wanted this moment where we kind of all came back, and we knew I was going to kind of narrate the, you know, kind of the lesson you learned, and which had been done before on other shows as well, kind of like a recap of all of it.
Sure.
And having this family prayer, which we didn't think was a big deal. We were like, in fact, I thought, well, doesn't everybody do that? But as when the show came out, I realized not a lot of people do, and so that was going into people's houses all over the world, and so some people didn't even understand it. And then it was neat when we got, you know, tons of feedback saying, hey, we started doing that, or we started eating together. And even sitting down and having a meal together was
super important.
That's getting more and more rare. You know, everybody's busy, and, you know, food is, you know, it's here and there. But again, if had I grown up probably like we do now, I wouldn't have been as good a storyteller. We wouldn't have had all those times and moments there back then. And so yeah, just kind of all those things came together, and you just had a and then the way it was shot was so differently, because nobody's ever done that. It was a reality show, but shot like a sitcom. You know? So it was shot sitcom. Like, I entered the room like you think Seinfeld walks in, or
the thing missing was like a live audience. It felt like, it's very,
you know what I'm saying? Like, you would enter a deal, and I'd be, hey, and so we would start there, and we would go on these journeys, and so but real people. And you're not playing anybody. The joke I say when I speak, I'll say, hey, someone will say, I love Duck Dynasty, and I'll say, I played Willie on that show.
It's a half truth to it. That's great. I love it.
So yeah, that was kind of how it all. So just learned a lot. You know, at first we didn't know what exactly we were doing, but we had done outdoor TV on the Outdoor Channel.
Right.
We'd done 3 seasons of that. So man, it was like God was just like giving us a little bit like. Okay, learn here. And before that, we had shot these videos. You know, we had been out, which is really common now. Everybody's shooting everything, but you're talking about shooting videos before cell phones. You know, and so we're shooting this stuff in the woods. And Dad kind of had this knack. Again, he was a good storyteller, but he was a little bit over the top, and so he was really irreverent. And so when I look back at the duck videos, like from the '90s, and it's like everything he saw in Clint Eastwood movies, he would do on like somehow it was a version of Clint Eastwood in every one.
I can see your dad
the spitting, you know, like Josie Wells when Clint Eastwood's spitting on everything. He spits on the dog, and he spits on the dead guy. So you had those kind of elements, and then just kind of this like in your face, and like, you know, of course we had the guns, boom, 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 you know, and so he was a big fan of like Clint Eastwood, so you kind of saw a lot of that, and so he was kind of out. And at the time, this was unheard of. Duck hunting was like a stiff game, you know, like these guys who have their, you know, little nice shirts on, and they go shoot with their fancy duck calls, and And here comes this guy like from Louisiana with this beard. He never did a duck call contest. He never went through the right channels. And we just started gaining this real kind of underground movement of people who were like, it's like the common guy, you know, it's like, and so it was just enough to kind of learn how to, you know, build a brand, do some stuff on video. And then here comes this opportunity to do an outdoor channel show. The two guys who produced that had come out of reality TV. So we did kind of some reality stuff. And A&E ended up actually purchasing all that as well, and then remixed those in some old, because you had, you know, basically really high quality, well shot stuff, you know, from when my kids were really little, and just some weird, bizarre stuff we were doing that we thought was funny. and we could do it, you know, on that platform. We could do whatever we wanted. You know? So it was like there's no rules. It was like you could just do it, and that show was really popular, and so sales went out. So it was, and then we got just enough of a taste of it to where, when A&E, when we did the big show, it wasn't like just zero to hero. There was enough foundational stuff to, no, it was not in the realm of what happened. I mean, like as big as that thing got. And I mean,
so when it broke out like that and it got that big, you know, it went from something that was kind of a fun novelty to all of a sudden, you know, your family's in the zeitgeist for an extended period of time with a lot of eyes on you. Were you guys prepared for that? And how did you guys cope with that?
No, it was hard. It was, you know, we heard all these cliches, you know, these are good problems to have. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like, because our website crashed, it kept crashing and we couldn't get the orders out. And which was, now this is funny. So like the first Christmas after the show, so the show started in March of 12. And then, so that first Christmas, man, the website crashed a couple of times, and which was so bad because it ran the credit card and then it crashed. So we had your money, but we didn't know what you ordered.
Oh my God.
So people would call and be like, hey, I didn't get my order. And we'd be like, why don't you just tell me what you ordered? You just say whatever you want. Like,
if you'd known that as the customer, you'd be like, I've ordered all this. Like,
so the nature of the show. So this is this bizarre land we were in. The nature of the show, everybody's goofing off and nobody's working. So they're like, Willie, seriously, make them work. I don't have my, you know, my duck call and my hat, and I saw what y'all just did last week on TV. And I'm like, okay. I actually had to make a video. I had to make a video in the warehouse with, like, by this time we're running 24 hours a day. And I'm like, hey guys, we're really working. Like, you know, we had to be like,
you gotta separate.
Yeah, it was like, you know, that's a show, but we really are trying to run a business. And then trying to do that while you're filming is at the beginning, man, everything was just on top of each other. So you're talking about the set is the warehouse.
Yeah.
It's the same warehouse that's shipping, that phones are ringing.
Yeah.
And we're trying to do all this production and run these stories. And then you had these gobs of people show up, which I never dreamed people were going to come. Like, and I remember the first day, like we had 3 people show up because we didn't sell retail.
Yeah.
We were a wholesaler. So we had these 3 people come and say, hey, we wanted to buy something. And I mean, me as a business guy, I'm like, yeah, come on in here, you know? So I give them like a catalog that we send to, like, you know, the stores, like, you know, Dick's Sporting Goods or Bass Pro. Yeah, and it's like, I'm just making up a retail price. And I'm like, wow. I said, I think people are going to show up. And then the next day it was like 14, and then it was 30. And then, you know, at some point it was 3,000 people. I mean,
that's always crazy to me because I mean, like The Chosen is going through it right now with their sets down in Dallas. It's like, you know, not just people that follow the show and their fans, but they make this mecca to where their show that they love took place.
Yeah. So then I put a store in, and half the warehouse became a retail. Yeah. Now it's a museum, and so you can walk through. And so geographically, we had a great place. So if we would have been way out in the boonies, which is, it's funny, the show, everybody thought that.
Yeah,
and Dad does live quite a ways out in the woods. But from the show, nobody realized that our town was, you know, I mean, we just hadn't been on the interstate. So that really helped our business. You know, had we been way off the beaten path, it would have been, I think they still would have come, but it would have been more difficult.
The other thing that happened was you ended up with some, you know, pretty significant fans that were like well-known people. Like I found that like you're you're kind of Faith's version of Kevin Bacon. It's just like like 6 degrees of separation from Willie Robertson, and it's like as soon as I'm in a crowd, of people, and your name comes up, it's like, oh, I love him. I'm friends with him. Everybody knows you. Like, you kind of floated in a lot of circles. Was that for a Louisiana boy? How was that?
That was amazing. It was really, it happened so fast that you didn't really have time. At this point in my life, I can look back more now and be like, wow, that was, but at the moment, man, it was just, and you're trying to not become something you're not. You're trying to stay humble, obviously, and just, which is helpful when you're still in the same town. It was like we didn't have to go to LA or New York.
Sure.
And, so we had a lot of things that were that way, but it was cool. I mean, there was people I met, that I was like, I cannot believe, who would ask for a photo, I mean, when I met like Chuck Norris, I thought that was a big, this is Chuck Norris.
Chuck Norris. All these other, like, Chuck Norris was the pinnacle.
I think my first picture I asked with someone was MC Hammer. I thought that was the coolest thing ever because I was a big fan.
Please tell me you were wearing parachute pants with him.
Oh, no, not with him. That was actually, I think that was a meeting at Walmart.
That's funny.
And there was just some of the, and then obviously, I mean, those are some that were just kind of cool. But then other, Billy Graham, I mean, I got to sit with him in his home before he passed away, which was just amazing. And what's interesting about he was obviously older at the time. And so his daughter came and said, Daddy, this is the Duck guys, and said they came all the way from Louisiana to see you. And he looks up at me and he goes, why would you come see me? I'm a nobody.
Wow.
And I was like, wow.
That'll own you.
The humility that he had. So that, for me, that kind of was like, hey, remember who you are and where you are and try to make that. But yeah, it was crazy. It was just, so it was neat. There was some really.
We have a mutual friend that's a well-known actor that you were in a zombie film that was never released.
We're not talking about that. We are not.
I can't tell the story.
I can't even
I wish
talk
I could.
about that one. Boy, you little sneaky. You TMZ in me here, man. I've always said my favorite thing about Duck Dynasty was the people that I've gotten to meet. I mean, you included, and just the there's just so many more people like across the world, and especially in this country, that are just cool people to hang out with. People who have done stuff in business, and so what it does, it helps me to raise the bar, and not because I mean I grew up in a small town, not much, and I think our vision gets pretty limited, of what you can even do. So being able to go around and just meet so many people, that's been the coolest thing.
Well, you guys stepped into doing some film stuff yourself. It started with being a part of the God's Not Dead franchise, and you had your moment there. Like how did that phone call come about?
You're like, hey, that was a crazy one. So this was in the time when, we were just drinking out of the fire hydrant, and deals were coming like crazy. It was like a movie, I mean, every day people would call and like, I got this, and we couldn't even keep up with all of them. And I didn't even have enough time to do all these things. And that was one. And so they were going to pay, and I was like, so what is it, And I didn't know. I didn't read the script. I didn't know anything about it. I was like, how long is it going to take? And where will we shoot it? And so they were going to shoot it in West Monroe, actually. So went and shot the thing. And I didn't know, so I'm coming from reality, and so I read the little script, and I said, all right, I got it. And so I do my version of it, which I thought was awesome.
Yeah, you and I are a lot alike. We like to shoot from the hip.
I was like, So the director goes, well, that was amazing. Wow, you're so talented at doing that. Now, let's do it exactly like the script says. And I said, like exactly? And he was like, yeah. And there was a verse there. There was, which is interesting. That's going to be a theme of. There's this Bible verse that I'm having to quote, like it's on the top of my head, but it's not the version that I grew up reading. So it's a different version, and so I kind of struggle with that. But anyway, knocked it out, and then when God's Not Dead premiered, so they were going to have a showing there at our theater, and I remember sitting there, and I thought, I still don't know anything about the movie.
That's funny.
I only know what I shot. I don't know how it begins, how it ends. I don't know who's in it.
That's funny.
And I thought, what if this is terrible? Like, what if I'm watching this movie and it's awful? And I'm like, oh, and I'm like cringing. And it turns out it was a good movie. And that movie, I mean, it did so well. But man, I've been in Africa and I've had little kids come up and go, they don't say Duck Dynasty, they say God's Not Dead. I'm like, wow. So that was cool. It was cool to kind of get our feet wet. And even though I didn't really have a clue about anything like how production would be like that, really didn't see myself in movies at all. But yeah, it worked. And,
well, to come full circle and then do your family story with The Blind, and the movie did great. Like I was talking to you as it opened, and like, you know, it's a nerve-wracking thing putting a movie out, much less your family story. Like, how was that experience of like?
Oh, and by the way, on the God's Not Dead, it almost didn't happen.
Really?
Yeah. So Troy DeHaan, who's from New Orleans,
the Raging Cajun.
He was really pulling for Tim Tebow.
Oh,
and his partner was pulling for Corey and I, and so the partner won out, and so. There's not a day goes by I don't remind him. I said, you almost had Tebow in that movie, and obviously it would have done as well.
you tanked Tebow's film career.
So Tebow was almost on that movie, and,
dude.
which is fun. Tim and I, we do actually a lot of stuff together, and so, but I bring that up, especially to Troy.
I'm sure.
Because Troy was involved in this movie as well, and The Blind, and and this was more of Corey, and so we started a production company, Tread Lively. And the whole idea behind that was people say tread lightly. And I had this friend I know named Kurt Lively, and we call him the Jesus guy. He's a little bizarre, but he screams Jesus all the time. And so I said, what about tread lively? Like, you know, because we don't want to be out there, you know, treading lightly around everything. And so that's kind of where the and what we wanted to do, we saw the big impact that Duck Dynasty had as far as faith and just positive TV, you know, and we were like, we want to make more stuff, not stuff about us, but like tell other stories and other people's stories and get, you know, let's get more people involved in production. And, you know, because we felt like there was Duck Dynasty was sitting there. It was a bright light with around a bunch of other shows that really weren't. And so, yeah, that's kind of where we want to start. And so Corey and my cousin Zach, So Zach's mom on the movie The Blind, Zach's mom was my Aunt Jan, who passed away. And she was the one, I mean, really without his mom, my Aunt Jan, Dad probably never would have come to the Lord. She was the one that was so persistent.
That's amazing.
And so it was cool, yeah, even from him, from making that movie, you know, it's a tribute to his mom, you know, because she was the sister that, because at the time, Mom couldn't deal with Dad. You know, he's kicked us out of the house. This is this terrible marriage. And so she couldn't really minister to him or probably even think about his soul as much as like how he's ruining her life and our lives and all that. But it was Jan who was the one who begged that preacher to go up there and talk to Phil in that bar. And so, so they really did the heavy lifting as far as the movie and what it was going to be. And I was involved as well, just trying to, you know, and we just learned a lot. Like we didn't really know how to make a movie. Like but we knew enough to get in there and get started. And I think sometimes in life you just have to go. You just have to go jump in there and
that's something
figure it out.
I really respect about Corey is Corey. Like she's a go getter. Like that woman you married. My gosh,
she's a baller. Yeah,
she is. Like I just watched because I know you guys had like, you know, a live production play that was going that you guys did that, and then you had the film, and like she jumps in and just figures out, okay, this is what we're gonna do, and let's do it. Yeah, and it's something really impressive about that.
She is. You know, it's been a good team. We just celebrated 32 years together. Crazy, so yeah, that's it's a good team, and it's difficult. It's you know, I think in the creative space, we've had our challenges with working together creatively because you know how it is creatively. It's like
it's friction.
Yeah, because it's like I think this is good, and I think this is terrible. Who's right? I don't know.
It's funny.
So yeah, sometimes we have to learn to get out of each other's way. And so with the movie, she was over there every day, like on set. Wow. We shot it in Louisiana, and so but she's like that, she's like growing up, like when our kids, everything that was put together in our home, she put it together. I couldn't put anything together. I'm looking at the box and I'm going, no, I think I got it. And she's like, no, she reads the directions, and so she's been like that. Her family was really good at business, very successful business people, strong people of faith. They started a bunch of things that were really amazing. And so she had a great work ethic, and she's really smart. And so, like way smarter than I am, so yeah, it's just a good combination and of what she can bring to the table. And, and even on the show, like Dynasty, she wasn't, what's funny, the joke is she was always chopping vegetables. So it was always, she would be chopping vegetables, which cracks me up because she doesn't even cook. And but to have her doing something in the scene, it'd be like, okay, and you just more chopping vegetables, more whatever the scene was. She was a professional vegetable chopper.
You just blew the myth for me because I assumed she was an incredible cook and she was up chopping them.
Let me tell you something. We got married about a year into it. I'm like, this ain't gonna work, so I called my mom. I said, Mom, Corey can't cook. I mean, she ain't got it. I don't think. Mom's like, I told you marry that skinny girl. I was gonna have it. She's way too skinny, And so yeah, but she did. I mean, when the kids were younger, she cooked some, but then at some point I took it all over, and so now I do all the cooking. Which has been amazing because now that's what brings our family back together. When I say our family, like my kids and they all come and to cook. So when I'm when I'm out of town, which I am a lot, I don't think they miss me. They miss the cooking. So they're like, we're starving to death because they order their food and out and all that. And so yeah, I'm trying to pass that down as well, even to our kids. But she kind of knows. She knows the things that she's good at and what she can take on and try to what she has capacity to do. And yeah, she's a go-getter. I mean, she'll get in there and figure it out. And man, she gets what drives me crazy about her is she's so like, she wants it perfect and she'll stay up all night to make, one of the things she does, she'll put out a tweet or something. And so I'll say, it's got to be the perfect tweet. It's about one of our kids or something, and she will work on that for hours. Hours, like how it's said. And then she'll read it to me. And does this sound too like this? And and so, but that's just kind of her nature. When I'm like, good enough, I guess good. I'm not even on Twitter. I mean, I don't even post stuff anyway. But yeah, she's done great. Zach, my cousin's great too. I mean, he's Zach's funny. Zach was so I was a college minister when I was in my 20s. Yeah, I was a youth minister and a college minister, and I ran this church camp. Zach was in my group. Wow. Zach and my little brother.
Wow.
Yeah, they're both running around smoking dope, and always catting around. So, and I used to go over and I'd do these surprise,
inspections.
I'd be knocking on the door. It would take them like 12 minutes. So, hang on. I would come in. There'd be like 2 incense things burning. And I'd walk in. They'd be like, "Hey, Willie, what are you doing?" I'm like, "I was coming to check on you." So yeah, we've spent a lot of time together. And he was great. And so I'm really I'm glad that he found this calling in production and business. And so it's great. Yeah. So it's just, I mean, it's about expansion, it's about empowering other people. I think that's like, that's what I look to do. It's not just what I can do. It's what I think that's the message of Jesus. I think, he empowers, his disciples, and then they take that. And I mean, if you read like, even the parables, like the parables of the talent, the one that where you take something, you just don't just bury it. It's like and so I'm always looking to other people and what they can do and how they can then be in charge of this, then they can run this. And so it's, it's expansion. I think it's the nature of even the church and how it was begun by Jesus, but I think it works well too. It's, because I'm so limited, I'm a limited person of what I can, even what I like or think, and that now I'm getting older, and so I'm like way behind, and things move on, and so you have to have that. I think in movies and all that, something I may love. I remember like Oh Brother, Where Art Thou when it came out. I thought that was I still think it is the funniest movie. I mean, is
that one your favorite?
Definitely.
We talked about that a little bit.
I've been working on my top 10 movies for probably 15 years. Like I can't I'm still working on like where does this, and it's certainly one of the top. But I would take it to all my friends, and a lot of them just hated it. They were like, "How do you?"
What was
think
it
this
about
is
that
funny?
when that got you that you liked?
I love the different characters. I love the way even the smaller characters were like there was so much depth in each little character.
Yep.
You know, even the ones that weren't on much, it was like they went into every one. It was like, you know, like the guy at the radio station, which you know, he plays this part where he's blind, you know, but it was just like his one little thing, you know, and just all of them were just so on point.
And the music was so good.
Music was good, and then that was my dad's cousins who were the music.
Really?
Yeah, they were had written some of those songs. But yeah, there was so much of the like, and then you've got Clooney as the straight guy, which I like, you know. So you just had this super funny stuff, you know, of coming off the all of them. The little kid. I mean, just that whole movie. It was just what's his name? The Bible salesman.
He's so good.
If it's on, I'll watch it.
Yeah.
I've watched it hundreds of times.
Yep.
And just quote it. And then I have a friend, one of my camera guys who I hunt with a lot, and we sit out there, we just quote it over and over, you know. And the language they used, like, you know, and I don't know how they figured out, like, did they go study, like,
the Coen brothers,
these words that were used and these phrases, you know?
The Coen brothers tend to do that. Like, they're like they really kind of make their characters based on like how they speak and their language. Like, there's another one they did that I like called The Lady Killers, and that's with Tom Hanks, where he's playing like the kind of the Kentucky Fried Chicken Colonel kind of guy.
Okay,
and he's like, but it's like a murder mystery one, but everybody in that film has a very distinct kind of stereotype to them, and just Tom Hanks is this Southern gentleman is just hysterical. It's just hysterical. But I think "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" They just leaned into it. It was so good.
Oh man,
so good.
Because I didn't see it coming. Like it wasn't like I was like, oh, I can't wait for this movie. I just kind of bounced in there. I was like, that is genius.
That's awesome.
That is a genius movie.
Like,
loved it. And it was close to home. I mean, all the places in Mississippi were, you know, I could drive there about an hour. Yeah, so it's like it kind of resonated, but yeah, what a fun story.
So with for you, like, you know, I know that, you know, with the show ending and then finding, you know, new chapters, you know, you've gotten into writing a good bit now. Like, writing's like your new, like, you know, field that you're plowing.
It really is, yeah. I did a thing when I turned 50. Looking back at my life, it's been so interesting. So you've got like from 10 to 20. I did school, and then I got married right at the end when I was 19. So then from 20 to 30, I ran this church camp, had my kids, or most of them, and then really poured into the marriage and the home. I think the foundational things. Learned to work hard. You know, I was out mowing grass, you know, and I made no money. And at 30, I decided to make a change and then take over Duck Commander. So from 30 to 40, I just poured into business, I mean, these are big, like, how do you sell to Walmart? How do you sell to Bass Pro? I was going to all the shows and learning, you know, the business side of it. And then from 40 to 50 was Duck Dynasty.
Yeah.
So now I have to learn this whole new thing of television and, you know, all the things that goes along with it. Now speaking, you know, I go and speak a lot, and
you're a good speaker. Like,
and
you work the way you communicate to a crowd's really you've got a skill.
Well, I felt like if I had that knack, you know, I looked at the things people were most scared of, and public speaking ranks higher than death. And I thought,
wow.
Well, if I have some sort of knack and it doesn't bother me, I should really use that because a lot of people would rather die than get up and speak publicly. Which is interesting because I stuttered really bad as a child.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I stuttered bad. Oh, and I got just made fun of. Like, my family was not the nicest family. You know, it was like, you know, they were making fun of me pretty heavily, and stuttered really bad, and I couldn't read. I'm still not a great reader, like out loud. And so anyway, I get to 50, and Corey and I went out and did this kind of life planning class, and for a few days, and and we just kind of went through what's next and what do you want to do, and so weeded out some things like, is this kind of figure out what you want to do. Weed out things and like, oh, this ain't working, and then go. And one of the things I wanted to do was really teach and start passing on, and that's where the writing kind of came from. COVID hit in 20, and so I had, in all the craziness of what COVID did for me, I was pretty much making money off crowds of people. That's how I made money, and so I'm home now, which was really fun and awesome. It was just like I cooked all the time. I was cooking for like the whole neighborhood and doing all this stuff. But I started this writing, and I wanted to teach people about sharing their faith, and that was one thing that the way the blind feels life, that impacted my life so much that I wanted to put that down. And so I had a guy that I met at a conference. It was like a global outreach conference, and I had this guy from South Africa, and he had seen me do this thing on a whiteboard, because I ended up I taught this class at the church. I went and heard Lee Strobel. I didn't know who Lee was, and
Lee's amazing.
So Lee's doing this thing on evangelism, and he says, hey, we need a ministry of evangelism in churches, and so I go back to my church and I asked who's in charge of that, and nobody. And then they said, hey, you want to do it? And I said, I'll do it. I ain't got nothing else to do.
Wow.
So I start teaching every Sunday, like after the service. Anybody that wanted to come in there, and I would just start. It was the funnest room in town. We had all kind of people that came in here, but a lot of people wanted to learn how to do that, and so I just started doing that. And then he said, "Hey, you want to put this down? And you should put this down in a book." And so we started working on this book, and that was one of the things. We did the musical, which we still it didn't work out in Dallas, but we're gonna continue that with his story and see where that can find life again, because I think it's a powerful story about Jesus. We had the movie come out, and then the whole time I was writing this book as well, that's called Gospeller, and it comes out this year in May. And
I love that title.
Gospeller. Yeah, Corey found the word.
Like it's an old term, right?
Yeah, it's an old term that, and I don't know if you know Andy Andrews, but he's a buddy, and so I called him and I said, "Hey, Corey found this word called Gospeller. It's just one who shares their faith publicly or personally." So that's all it meant. And so Andy starts research. Andy's written a lot of books, and so he says he founds this like it's a law, like in one of the states, and it's like, no one should stop a known gospeller from spreading the gospel on a street corner. Like it was in a law.
That's cool.
So it was this term that was really well used a couple hundred years ago, but has just died out in in our language in America. But which I think is ironic, because people sharing their faith has died out as too. Well, and so you kind of see that where that used to be a thing. And so I just love the word, and so I did that, and I just go through. I tell a lot of stories about people that I've shared with, and people that have obeyed the gospel, and just trying to help people to do that. And so I'm super proud of that. But then also I'm writing other things. We've got another movie that I started kind of writing on that. Because then once we did The Blind, it was like once we did that,
scratch
I was like,
the itch.
Now. And I know what I would have done, and I know, and I want to try to find that, kind of like Oh Brother, and that there's a story to tell, and because of my background and where I'm from, like. And I just love weird, interesting characters, and Dad was like that too. Like we always have people around us like, why do you hang out with that person?
Yeah.
Because I just think they're so interesting, and they probably don't think anything like I do, and they may be bizarre. But I just love the differences, in that. And
dude, I would
writing some movies, and then we're working on some other TV stuff, and I'm still filming a lot. I've done a few. I just did another movie, a Western movie. It's called The Butcher. It's coming out, and so I have a little role in that. And I've got another movie that I'll be in this year that we're shooting coming up in the summer. So I kind of wanted to stick my toe a little bit in actually being on the screen to do that.
That's cool.
Just to see, I like it, and I think it's interesting. It kind of helps me more with the whole project, even from a production level. Is when you also when I promote, then I can promote it, and but I just like jumping in there and doing it, and why not? We've sold I used to tell, like, I've sold over 1 million albums, Duck the Halls, a Robertson Family Christmas. So we went platinum with that.
That's incredible.
I've sold millions of books and been on, the most watched non-scripted show in the history of cable. But by trade, I never was trained in writing. I'm not an author. I'm not an actor. And I'm not a musician at all. So, I mean, part of that's America. It's like you can see it and do it and want to do it. But you challenge yourself and you say, hey, go do it. That's what I want to pass to my kids is say, don't be scared to do, if you fail, you fail, but at least you tried and who knows, you may be successful. And
I love that.
So yeah, just trying to set that bar to, for them to, not just my kids, but also other people. I run into younger people, and normally it's the confidence. They're just not confident. They're scared, and they're just frightened. I'm like, sometimes you just got to jump in there and try it. What's the worst that can happen? So,
dude, I love that about you guys. I think that there's definitely an authenticity into just being the real you. Yeah. And even as you step into acting, I mean, the beard and everything gives you the perfect character actor. I mean,
that's why I did the Western.
I've already envisioned who your character is in The Butcher. I'm like, yeah, I can totally see him there with, so it's like, there's an opportunity there to just continue to be versions of who you naturally are, what gravitates through your soul.
Well, I try to remember the good. That's one of the things with social media, and that's why I don't watch. I don't look at it because I don't want people influencing my brain on good or bad. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't believe all the good or certainly probably not as bad as what somebody may say, but I try to glean the good. So I was with an actor, maybe the one you mentioned earlier. And he looks at me and goes, Willie, you're a good actor. And this is like 13 years ago, you know what I'm saying? Like way back then. And I just never forgot that,
Yeah.
And whether or not it's true or not, but he said it and it encouraged me. So I could either live my life based on the handful of negative things that somebody said, like my dad said, I think I sang one of the songs somewhere, and my dad goes, well, shucks, I can't think of the singer's name. He goes, Bob Dylan. He goes, well, Bob Dylan couldn't sing either, and he made it. Like, that was my dad's. It wasn't a compliment. I was like, I don't know really how to take that. You just said I can't sing.
I'm sitting right here.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm right here. So you can either live your life based off the few things that somebody told you can't do or you're not good at, or you can take those encouraging things and try to use those and do those for something good. So yeah.
I love that. Well, for just to wrap up, last question. So you're talking about this, that you're going to keep doing, dabbling in movies and different things like that, and your favorite movie is Oh Brother Where Art Thou? So in the
one of my favorite, one of them, top three,
top three. All right, so we haven't settled the top 10. It's not locked in stone, but it's up there. It's up for debate.
It's a high one.
So when somebody finally, you've already done your dad's Story with the Blind, but so when somebody finally does the Willie Robertson movie, and it's in the style of like Duck Dynasty meets Oh Brother Where Art Thou? Who is playing Willie Robertson on the screen?
Oh,
who are you casting?
That is a great question. I'm gonna say Chris Pratt. It's got to be Chris Pratt, right? I mean,
all right, Chris Pratt.
We're both super good looking.
Yes.
Well, yeah, you'd have to have some sort of beard, but we're good looking. We're
all
both in shape. We've got
great shape.
Well, here's the deal. I remember when Chris looked like I looked, and so then he transformed himself.
He has the ability to go backwards.
There's
pulling him out of the Guardians.
There's hope that I can.
You're calling him back to his true form.
Yeah, that I can transform. I think he would be good. I think he probably gets, at this age, right now of who that would be. So yeah, it'd be interesting. I don't even
deal.
Would never even think about that.
Phone.
Who would direct that? Who would?
I don't know. You have to talk to some directors.
Okay,
we'll
I'll
see.
talk to somebody.
We'll talk to somebody. We'll
I know people. I know people who do.
We'll make it an even trade. I will direct it for free if I get a chance to see the zombie movie that we referenced in the past. Well, dude, it's a pleasure to have you on the Storytellers. In all sincerity, for those of us in faith that are trying to kind of do things that represent what we believe out there. Like a lot of us really owe a lot to what you guys did on television with Duck Dynasty. I think because there were just certain people in the zeitgeist that broke into mainstream culture being authentically, people that believe the gospel and preached it. And you guys were bold, and you still are bold. And so I think it gave a lot of us courage to kind of take some chances with the, project.
Because we owe that to, if Jesus had not come into my mom and dad's life, they would not have stayed together. My entire life would have been completely different. I wouldn't be sitting right here.
Wow.
Every day, everything I do would be different than had that not happened. So that's the payback to the, like, we understand had that not happened. So that's what we feel like we owe everything to that, because we wouldn't have any, the way our lives turned out. Not that we couldn't be Christians or couldn't be happy. It would look completely different. There would be no Duck Dynasty. There would not have been a duck call company. So we're not getting off that. And honestly, that has, the faith and the staying together and the family has helped with all the success. Meaning, if we chunked all that in, and if Corey and I split up, and you wouldn't, the whole thing would, everything that we do has
pushed you together.
And so it's just it's more of just that's the relationship that we have with the Lord, is like, what else can we do? And it's not, and let's face it, I mean, we've had a great life, and I mean, the people around the earth that have to put it up, or the consequences are far worse, around the world. And so those are the ones. But yeah, I mean, God's blessed us, and we love him, we talk about him, and I don't back off that at all. And if that encourages people, I'm glad. So
that's awesome.
Well, I'll speak up more about it.
One storyteller to another. We appreciate you, buddy. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, buddy.
Willie is the real deal. Love that guy. I would hang out with him anytime. Every time he comes through town, we don't have anything business-wise to talk about. We're just like, hey, you want to hang out? And it's always tons of fun. We laugh, share stories, really appreciate his authenticity, and I think the thing I like about Willie is what he speaks to me is this idea of just being willing to be yourself, to not apologize for who you are. And I think a lot of us as storytellers, we feel like in order to make it and make ourselves marketable, we have to kind of be this chameleon and be a version of ourselves, and even kind of edit out all the things and make ourselves whatever people want to buy. And there is an idea that you do want to consider the audience in the stories that you tell, but there's this other part of it of just be authentic, be you. And then you just find a group of people that enjoy kind of the way that you see the world, and want to kind of enjoy, what you're putting out there as far as a storyteller, and to let the audience catch up to you. And there's this authenticity that Willie and Corey do with their lives, and the way that they tell the stories, that is the real deal. And so I think it's encouraging to me as a storyteller when I see other storytellers that do that. So take that to heart as you guys continue to find your stories. Thank you for watching. We'll see you on the next edition of The Storytellers.
The Storytellers is a Kingdom Story Company production. It is produced by Nick Carey with production assistance from Ben and Justin Bailey. Our executive producers are Kevin Downs and Brandon Gregory. Social media for the show is run by the team at Troops and Allies, and our music is Twisted Rooster by Tommy Prophet. Special thanks to Darren Weatherly, Evan Johnston, and our entire team at Kingdom Story Company. We have so many exciting guests coming up this season. To ensure you don't miss any of them, subscribe to The Storytellers for free on YouTube at Kingdom Story Company, or wherever you listen to podcasts. For exclusive first looks at our upcoming films, behind-the-scenes content, and invitations to advanced screenings, join the conversation as a Kingdom Insider at KingdomStoryCompany.com, and follow us at Kingdom Story Company across all platforms. As always, thanks for joining Andrew Erwin and his friends on The Storytellers.